Stephen Paul Smith was born on August 6, 1969, in Omaha, Nebraska. His parents split when he was an infant, and he was raised by his mother in Duncanville, a suburb of Dallas. Elliott later joked that he didn't even like Texas. He got a tattoo of its outline, kind of the opposite of affection. Music became his refuge early on. By age 9, he was taking piano lessons, and by 10, he'd taught himself guitar. Elliott's true passion was the Beatles. He listened to them constantly, and later said hearing the Beatles' White Album inspired him to become a musician. His father, Gary Smith, often took him on road trips to Portland, where Elliott felt at home. When he was 14, he left his mother's house in Texas to live with Gary in Portland. That move marked a turning point. In Portland, he'd find artistic freedom to channel his loneliness and anger into music, away from the toxic masculinity and conformity he'd felt stuck with in Texas. Elliott was a nickname he picked up. His birth name, Stephen, sounded too much like a jock. He graduated as a national merit. He was dabbling in recording on a borrowed 4-track tape deck. His earliest songs, small piano pieces and acoustic ballads, would foreshadow the emotional honesty that became his trademark. After high school, Elliott attended Hampshire College in Massachusetts, studying philosophy and political science. In a campus dorm, he met Neil Gust, and together they formed the band Heatmiser, along with drummer Tony Lash and later bassist Brandit Peterson. The group released a few records: Dead Air in 1993, Cop and Speeder, and the Yellow No. 5 EP in 1994. Despite the band's progress, and even a completed album, Elliott always felt out of sync. As he later explained, when you grow up around a lot of yelling and screaming, the last thing you want to do is be in a band where everyone is yelling and screaming. In Heatmiser, Elliott's soft voice and intricate finger-picked guitar were constantly drowned out by the grunge guitars and shouted choruses. He felt, as he put it, polar opposite to grunge. Late at night in a Portland apartment, Elliott quietly recorded songs on his 4-track. His girlfriend persuaded him to send one of these lo-fi tapes to Cavity Search Records. To Elliott's surprise, label head Christopher Cooper offered to release the entire set. In 1994, Roman Candle was released. He realized his true voice was in the quiet songs. Obsessions with loss, loneliness, and escape. After Heatmiser's final album, Elliott had already left the band in spirit. By 1995, Elliott's solo career was its own force. He released a self-titled album, Elliott Smith, that refined the sound of Roman Candle. He revisited themes of isolation and addiction that defined his songwriting, but nothing at this stage compared to what came next. By 1997, Elliott's quiet reputation had grown. His third solo album, Either Or, brought more polish, but still kept that bedroom intimacy. He added fuller arrangements, but his soft melodies and double-tracked vocals remained at the core. Songs like Between the Bars and Say Yes felt modest on the surface, yet bristled with emotion. The album title came from a Soren Kierkegaard book, hinting at Elliott's lifelong wrestling with choices, despair, and hope. And then something unexpected happened. Portland filmmaker Gus Van Sant, a fan of Elliott's music, was scoring his new film, Good Will Hunting. He used several songs from Either Or, and asked Elliott for an original piece to close the movie. Elliott wrote Miss Misery on the spot. Good Will Hunting became a hit, and Miss Misery was nominated for the 1998 Academy Award for Original Best Song. The producers considered having Celine Dion or Richard Marx sing Miss Misery, but Elliott insisted on performing it himself. To many in the audience, he seemed like a ghost on stage, yet the performance was real and raw. The Oscar moment made Elliott's name. Labels began to pay attention. DreamWorks Records offered him a deal in late 1998. For the indie songwriter who had avoided the spotlight, it felt surreal. His next album, XO, felt more grand than ever before, a dramatic expansion from his basement demos. Yet Elliott's songwriting and soft vocals remained unmistakably himself. What most didn't see is that the attention also took a toll on Elliott's mental health. As Magnet magazine later chronicled, as his profile rose, Oscar nomination and all, Elliott was collapsing inside. He was fighting severe depression, using alcohol and drugs to cope. In interviews, he often downplayed it, saying he wasn't a tortured artist, but simply had a bad time for a while. With DreamWorks behind him, Elliott entered the studio with unprecedented resources, yet he sang in his familiar whisper, double-tracking himself to create layered harmonies. The contrast of ornate music with intimate vocals became one of his signatures. Critics loved EXO for expanding his sound without losing its core. It became his most successful album, selling well over 300,000 copies. He toured widely behind EXO. Offstage, however, Elliott grew more unstable. DreamWorks gave him freedom, but he was stumbling into the dark. His friends were worried. Some staged interventions, some hospitalized him, but he would begin using heroin after the EXO tour. Even during TV interviews, he confessed that he felt like the wrong kind of person to be really big and famous, showing how little he thought of himself. In 2000, Elliott recorded Figure 8, his final album. It was recorded partly at London's Abbey Road studios and showcased the Beatles' influence again. Figure 8 had no shortage of hooks and art pop flourishes. Reviews were positive, but many pointed out that Elliott didn't seem as fragile as before. By the time the Figure 8 tour ended, Elliott was a haunted figure on stage. Where he'd once looked down at the floor playing softly, now he sometimes turned his back to the crowd, forgetting lyrics and wrestling visibly with shakes and withdrawal. A friend would later recall, he'd play with his back turned to the crowd, or leave mid-song. I think he was just trying to disappear. The bright future his music had promised was slipping away. After Figure 8, Elliott parted with DreamWorks. He craved the solitude of home recording again. In the last 2 months of 2002 and early 2003, he stayed with friends in a Los Angeles home studio, working on what he hoped would become a grand double album, ultimately released as From a Basement on the Hill. On this project, Elliott experimented with noise and distortion, but revisited acoustic tenderness. In private life, Elliott was trying to turn a corner. He entered rehab programs. By August 2003, after his 34th birthday, he had gotten sober from alcohol and appeared physically healthier. He smiled again in studio photos and talked about a fresh start. Around this time, he composed Pretty, Ugly Before, a rare new song, which was shared in a small vinyl release. Tragically, on October 21st, 2003, Elliott Smith's journey ended. That afternoon, at his home in Los Angeles, he was found collapsed with 2 stab wounds to the chest. Paramedics rushed him to the hospital, but he died at 12:59 p.m. at age 34. The official ruling was ambiguous. The coroner called it undetermined because it was not clear if the wounds were self-inflicted. To this day, the case remains open and inexplicable to many fans. News of Elliott's death stunned the music world. Grief-stricken fans immediately turned his memory into a quiet vigil on Sunset Boulevard in Los Angeles, outside Solutions Audio, the building from his Figure 8 cover photo. He left behind not only unfinished songs, but a legacy that continued to grow. From a Basement on the Hill was released in 2004, finished by friends and producers. It's a haunting album, snippets of Elliott's final, painful years on tape. To many listeners, it sounded like a goodbye. In the years since, Elliott Smith's influence has only deepened. He's widely regarded as a foundational figure in indie music. Musicians like Phoebe Bridgers, Julian Baker, Adrian Lecker, and Clairo have named him among their inspirations. In the end, Elliott Smith didn't want the spotlight, but he left behind a light for others to follow. That is Elliott Smith's true legacy, reminding us that even in darkness, someone out there understood.
First the mic, then a half cigarette, singing Kathy's clown. That's the man she's married to now. That's the girl that he takes her